Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We continue our description of the new world. We shall be considering today further institutions of society, namely administration of justice, property ownership, cities, science, agriculture, media, army, police, the arts, and the churches. The great and important area of the administration of justice, legislation, administration, police, public prosecutors, judges, lawyers, has to return to its true task. Its sole purpose is to create justice on earth. If justice perishes, there is no longer any value in human beings living on earth. To enforce the rule of the spiritual principle of justice against raw violence or material means, this is one of the highest achievements of mankind. Justice is, apart from peace, the highest good that the government has to provide. He who establishes justice also creates peace, namely legal peace among men. There is no more noble activity than peacemaking, but it is also a most burdensome and difficult one. The soul actually thirsts for justice. Like the sick physically, we suffer spiritually whenever we experience injustice, regardless of whether it is directed against ourselves or against others. The workers within the legal system are called upon, like doctors, to relieve this suffering. A steed rears under the lash of the whip. Purusha trembles in the presence of injustice. If we want to create the kingdom of God on earth, if the request, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven," is to come true, then we have to first of all establish justice on earth. The fiery world is maintained by justice. He who, as a lawmaker or a judge, imparts justice to the people is like a priest who administers a divine gift. In his decision, a spirit manifests itself, either the divine or an evil spirit. Through the administration of justice, the principles of the higher world are supposed to incarnate among men. Therefore, many cultures do not even distinguish between the theologian and the legal scholar. To create justice means to realize an aspect of the divine, to recognize and to enforce the higher will on earth. Justice is corollary with divine will. The administration of justice is a sacred act. Do we sense anything like this in the parliament chambers or courtrooms, in the government offices and law firms? Justice, unfortunately, has fallen among the wolves. There are the parliamentarians who represent the interests of power and particular groups. There are civil servants like judges and public prosecutors who do not even know whom or what they serve. There are the lawyers who, like businessmen, are only looking for earning money with their clients. And finally, there are those who turn to the legal system not to ask for justice, but to use it as a tool to enforce their selfish, personal interests. Human judgment blunders. Laws obstruct the entrance. In the reasons stated for enacting a law, in the court rulings, in the pleadings of lawyers and public prosecutors, the word justice no longer appears at all. The judiciary restricts itself to defining and weighing the claims raised by way of compromise. The louder someone cries, the greater is the prospect of his being considered, at least with a part of his claim. Those who, unable or unwilling to powerfully assert their demands, hardly receive attention. To create justice means more than just weighing interests. It requires a clear decision as to which interest is justified and which is not. Such a judgment can only be made by recourse to higher principles. When interests are balanced, they are measured one against the other. There wins, wholly or in part, one interest over the other. Justice does not come about thereby, only the rule of interests. To find justice means not to measure each individual argument against the counter-argument, but against the higher principle. One of the most important paragraphs of Agni Yoga runs, "The victory of the spirit is achieved by enforcing immutable principles." It is crucial that you recognize the basis of decision-making can only be an absolute value. Relative concepts are unable to give us orientation. One can accept only an unchanging value. Thus, we shall learn to safeguard this value and to enforce it. If there is only one truth in a dispute, only one of the two parties concerned can be right. The task of the administration of justice is to find out who is right, and thereby also to show the right way, namely to confirm the winner and to guide the defeated back to the path of justice. The weakness of our time no longer believes in the one truth, in the validity of immutable principles. It considers justice a relative, not an absolute concept. People mistakenly presume that justice is a relative concept, that everyone has his own justice and his own good. Such a misconception can cause irreparable harm. Justice and good seem to be undefined concepts, but one must look deeply into the essence of consciousness to sense the indestructible foundations of beingness. People invent many so-called justices. They know personal, family, national, tribal, and racial justice. They hide behind official, school, and professional justice. One cannot enumerate all the many views of justice. This view is wrong. Justice is a principle of the higher world, which lies hidden in every individual case and must be carved out by the servants of the legal system. Either there rules justice or injustice. There is no relativity, no midpoint between them both. An example. If I demand payment of 100 euros from you and you reject my claim, only one of us can be right. There is no middle way in between. It may be that you owe me only 25 euros, but this is another matter. Then I am right with regard to 25 euros and wrong regarding 75 euros. But in a question which has to be answered with yes or no, both positions cannot be right, not even in part. Hypocrites will contend that injustice is a relative concept. Answer firmly that in every instance injustice is clearly evident, and a person with a sensitive heart can discern clearly the borderline. The judges and their assistants should neither be civil servants, nor scientists, nor businessmen, but wise men like Solomon, who are able to recognize the essence of a man or of a situation, and thus the justice hidden within it, with the straight knowledge of their hearts. Prospective judges should be examined not only for the knowledge of paragraphs, but, above all, regarding their ability to recognize the human heart. Various experts may be involved, but the judges themselves must have a sufficiently enlightened consciousness. The leader has to examine the consciousness of the judges himself. The administration of justice is an expression of a noble construction of the state. One must perceive through the heart the essence of what is taking place. Verily, only the heart is able to penetrate into all actions, into all motives, into all beings, manifesting discernment. This requires, above all, psychic energy, which, as we had already said, is able to infallibly find out the truth. We call psychic energy justice, since through the reactions of the energy it is possible to determine the different qualities of people. It surely will be the path of justice. Knowing how to summon psychic energy to his assistance will be the true adornment of a judge. Already Plato taught, the sages must lead the state. Likewise, the Bible says, the pure, the wise, the saints are the true judges. Dare any of you, having a matter against another, go to law before the unjust, and not before the saints? Do ye not know that the saints shall judge the world? Is it so that there is not a wise man among you, no, not one, that shall be able to judge between his brethren? Only he who knows the cosmic laws and the goal and destiny of man is able to enact earthly laws and to administer justice. Can lawyers and judges administer earthly laws if they have no concept of the laws of the universe? How can they establish earthly law without thinking of universal justice? It is impossible to isolate earth from all the worlds. It is necessary to understand the interaction of the earthly world and the subtle world in order to acquire the right to judge people's conduct. Without a clear picture of the evolutionary situation, the court will err. Verily, the judge takes upon himself a great responsibility if he is to remain at the helm of universal justice. We cannot, of course, exclude the possibility that even wise and selfless servants might come to different opinions as to the justice of a case. This does not mean, however, that there are different kinds of justice, but only that the ability of man to recognize the truth is limited. The truth is always the same, but the connections vary in accordance with the consciousness. The way out is the principle of hierarchy. The supreme courts, which ultimately have the last word, must consist of spiritually high-standing judges who are so close to the super-mundane world that we can hope that they will be able to find the right decision. Beyond earthly laws, the just ones know where the truth is. Judges should be knowledgeable and honest. One can evaluate the level of consciousness of an entire nation by its judges. The attitude of the old man is, I pursue my personal interests by all legal means, without regard to their legitimacy. As opposed to that, the new man, the immortal, recognizes justice is a principle whose rule benefits all human beings. If it is violated in one case, the whole system, and thus every individual member, suffers. So, in the long run, he who is involved in violating the law and undermining the system of justice hurts himself. If one party to a controversy persists in ignoring any means which might prove his adversary in the right, and so persists because he desires to carry some personal desire or opinion into effect, he not only wrongs his adversary, but he builds up a wall between himself and his God. Prove your boasted desire for justice by being just to each other. The seemingly isolated case of an infringement of the law is a disease that spreads. The opponent who is being deprived of justice might conclude that in the future he too will enforce his egotistic interests without regard for their legitimacy. The judge is corrupted by the deviation from the iron principle and might decide the next time more easily in a wrong way again. Others hear of the case and might say to themselves, justice does not count anymore, so we are no longer to respect it either. In this way, injustice enters society to the detriment of all members. The legal system is strengthened to the true benefit of all members of society when, in each individual case, all parties concerned strive to uphold, to respect, and to realize justice. It is weakened to the detriment of all of us when they violate justice by egotism or other low motives. If we want to create the new world, we all have to overcome our selfishness and adopt a completely new attitude. The impulse, I demand my right, is the old, outdated, selfish principle. The new man says, let us seek together the justice of the case. The existing contradictory legal system, with attorneys unworthily quarreling with one another, is antiquated. In the new world, the parties will no longer fight each other, but work together in order to find the truth and the justice of a dispute. We see, justice is a regime that comes true when everyone strives to realize it in his ordinary everyday life. On the other hand, when the individual violates the foundations, injustice gains the upper hand. The struggle between spirit and materialism is to be fought particularly in this area